Hi, how's it going, everyone? My name is Josh Sato, and I am the Business Development Specialist here at ScanSource for Cisco Security and for Cisco Collaboration. So today what I want to do is take you through our Cisco Security 101. This is just a very, very high level of those Cisco Security products, how that fits into the collaboration stack, and then what promotions do they have right now around secure remote workforce, especially as we have a lot of people going back into the office right now. There's a lot of organizations trying to figure out how do we do these kind of hybrid work environments, how do we let people go back into the office. So that kind of brings me to my first slide here, and we really have this remote work must be secure. So is your organization, the intellectual property, really at risk? So looking at what are these users based on down below, what is the feedback that they're giving there? So, are your meetings going and messaging is going to be encrypted at all times? What if your employees, losing a device or it's stolen or maybe infected with malware? How many people outside of your organization or employees are sharing information, with other companies? So looking at that, looking at all this data and especially as we're collaborating outside of those traditional four walls, maybe you're not on a VPN, maybe you're not on your, works kind of network, so maybe you're on a public network, so you have to think about these types of things. This is what IT is thinking about, is where's our data, how is it being protected, and then how do we make sure that we're protecting our users' data along those same lines as well. So I think it's important to look at that WebEx line when it comes through from a collaboration line. And really, what is this collaboration that we're seeing nowadays, right? So we're seeing a lot of the single platform kind of need, these multi-cloud services, the ability to have more visibility into a lot of those environments to see what people are doing from a day-to-day type of perspective. But also organizations are looking at getting those calling, those meetings and messaging all into one kind of bundle, so they're having to stay within one single pane of glass. But as people are going to these, more kind of remote or working outside of the office, you have those concerns about those security vectors or threat vectors of people coming in and trying to put those malicious code onto those companies' computers, or even onto that specific end device that's able to connect back into or call home into that network, which is going to sprawl out over the network, which it can then bring down the organization. So looking at all of these kind of pieces really bakes into what Cisco is really trying to do. And one thing that's really important about Cisco that I want to point out as we kind of start to talk about some of these security features is Cisco and security is really built into their DNA. So when we look at WebEx from a security perspective, we do know that it's always going to be encrypted from the ground up. It's not something that's bolted on. It's something that's built in from the ground up. So, so as we look at the Cisco WebEx security, this remote work security really just adds on those extra features, what gives them that complete secure remote work solution. So we'll get into, some of the analogies here in a little bit, but the way that I tend to look at security and the way that a lot of organizations tend to look at security is you need different layers of security in order to make sure that you're locking down that environment. So I relate it to locking, locking your door when you're going to leave your home, for example. You're going to lock your door. That is one kind of security feature that you may have, right? But if somebody really wants to get into your house, what if you left a window unlocked, for example? So yes, you were securing your house, but you do have other threat vectors that people can kind of come in. So that's what's looking at, even though WebEx is secure from the ground up, there still is the ability to have these remote work security to make sure that you're not losing any type of information, to make sure that you're not having any type of intrusions into those environments additionally. So next, just looking at, what is this use case really from the kind of the ground up? What does it look like for those remote workers? So on the left-hand side, we have that remote worker who's maybe sitting at home. Maybe they have some type of DNS type of provider. So that would be very similar to, kind of Umbrella or anything you're getting maybe through a Microsoft E3 type of VPN. But then you have it going out through that DNS traffic that we talked about before through Umbrella. So it's going and it's looking at, are there any malicious sites that it's seeing, based off of historical data that maybe it's trying to send you to? So it's looking at that type of information, really helping with a lot of those zero-day risks. And then we have that adaptive, multi-factor authentication. So, making sure that those users are who they say they are as they're coming into the network. And then as we have going out into the cloud, you have WebEx that's going up into the cloud as a software as a service, and you have Duo that's able to make sure that you're, logging in, saying in who you say you are, so you're getting access to those data, including even a public cloud, for example. And then we've got Securex there, which we will talk a little bit about, but this is a product that's included in every single one of the security suites from Cisco. And what this really does is it aggregates a lot of that information together and gives them kind of that single pane of glass. So one thing that's great about Securex is it's able to work with other networking solutions. So let's say, for example, maybe you have Extreme that your customer's kind of purchasing, and maybe they're not bought in on the Cisco network side. They can still utilize Securex to get a lot of that aggregate information from Extreme Networks. So they're getting that single pane of glass and the ability to see everything within one single area as well. So next we have, securing the castle. So this is what I like to use as the analogy, just to understand about what each security product fits into each one of the stacks, right? So we have securing the castle, the secure network. So what I want to start out with is looking at from the outside. So, your moat is really going to be that umbrella service that's sitting on the outside, right? So this is your first kind of intrusion effect, right? So if you're trying to cross that moat, or if you're opening up any files, for example, or anything along those lines, it's able to search it if it's sending you out to any malicious sites. If you're downloading kind of malicious materials or anything along those lines, it's able to kind of be that little bit of a first line defense. And then we have our drawbridge, which is really going to be your AnyConnect. So as you're sitting, outside those castle's walls or outside of your organization or office, AnyConnect's going to be that virtual private network tool. So what this does is it allows you to encrypt all of your traffic going back and forth, and only allows the end device, and then allows that office or the company you're working for to be able to decrypt that data, so then anything in between where maybe somebody's hijacking that information is not able to encrypt or decrypt that information, so they're not able to actually read it. And then your castle wall, for example, is really going to be where your security kind of starts for inside the organization, for example, or inside maybe of those office buildings. So you have, your Meraki or Firepower series from the Cisco side, but this is going to be your castle wall. And then you have, as far as the data side of it, you have for endpoint or endpoint security, which is going to be more of kind of your castle guards. And then Duo is really going to be that, that door guard, that person that's sitting at the door to make sure that you are who you are as you're entering the castle. So I like using this analogy because it does show that there's multiple different layers or threat vectors that people can get into. But security, as we think about it, isn't just throwing one type of software on top of a device or computer and thinking, hey, that's going to be secure. You have to think about all these little nuances, and your customers are really trying to think about them right now too, and figure out what do we really want to do from that side of it. So first, looking at that castle moat, so this first line of defense against threats. So, learning those intelligence as they are, or before they actually launch those attacks, seeing the visibility to protect those, and also being able to block or stop those connections from being made. So one thing that's great about Umbrella is it does utilize some AI data in there as well to make sure that as they're seeing or blocking or learning about any of this information, one thing that we have to think about too is really the back end. What is IT really seeing from that side of it? What is their visibility into it? So one thing that I like to think about is, as IT are seeing these results or these, malicious attackers kind of come through, it's going to throw up alerts into their system. So they're going to want to see what those alerts are to see maybe, hey, who's clicking on this type of information? Is it coming through maybe via email, for example? Any of those, but just have that visibility into where these attacks are kind of coming from. Now, sometimes within those security suites, you will have what are called kind of false threats. So having to filter through a lot of that data becomes very time consuming for a lot of IT. So when we look at Umbrella from this side of it, it's able to filter through a lot of that data on that end of it and make it a lot more useful for our users on that end to give them more time so they're facing towards the front end of that business. So next we have Duo, which is your multi-factor authenticator. So very similar to Microsoft's authenticator, but a lot of us have utilized this before, especially for doing any type of online banking. Usually we have some type of multi-factor authentication. So This is just taking that one step further, being able to make sure that you're utilizing so all of your apps or devices. What's great about this as well is you're able to load this onto and bring your own device. So if you have a personal device or cell phone like I have right now, I'm still able to have the company load this onto there, as well as control that application while not really messing with my personal kind of phone. So you're able to kind of partition your work and your at home type of a device from there, so you're not having to worry about intruding on any type of certain data. So next we have just talking about Cisco Umbrella and Duo kind of together, right? So creating this simple and protective way of just making sure that as we're granting any access to corporate applications, we're making sure we're going through that Duo line, and then as there's any type of first, kind of threats, looking at Umbrella. So looking at those kind of very basic entry-level combos for partners. So very great solution, especially if they're buying any collaboration solutions as well, to look at these kind of security stacks. So next we want to talk about the AnyConnect VPN. And as I talked about before, this is going to make sure we're encrypting kind of any traffic that's going back and forth. So, very important, especially if you have a lot of users working off-site, for example. Maybe they're working from a home office, making sure that all that information is going to be encrypted from their side is just going to make sure that no data is going to be hijacked along the way. And then looking at that Castle Guard, right, this is that software as a service type subscription. We have our secure endpoints, or formerly known as AMP for endpoints. What this is really going to do is help with a lot of that malware protection. So, we've seen in the news, especially within this kind of time frame, we had seen a lot more of these malware kind of attacks happening. So one thing that did come to mind, was the Colonial Pipeline attack. That was from a ransomware and malware type of attack. So these are happening to a lot of organizations. And what's happening a lot more is you're seeing ransomware as a service. So a lot of people are actually able to go out and buy kind of software that's able to deploy ransomware out randomly to companies, and it all happens at random. So they're not really pointing it towards you. It could just happen at randomly to one of your customers, to your company, for example. So having these types of intrusion attempts to be able to go through, making sure that it's able to protect itself as it's kind of looking there, making sure that you're kind of protecting users from themselves too, because I know I've been guilty of it before, and I know people have been guilty before, even outside of my organization before, with clicking stuff that comes through that looks legitimate. Maybe they think it's a PO or something like that. Maybe they think it's something coming from their boss. So these malicious sources get very, very creative. So having this piece of software and this AI is able to really help kind of police some of our people along those lines as well. And then next, just wrapping it up around kind of that castle analogy. So looking at that outer wall, this is going to be your firewall. So looking at those next-gen firewalls, right? So trying to figure out, how to stop more threats, how to detect these a lot faster, and also how to reduce that complexity from that side of it as well. So just looking at these solutions. So next I want to talk about what's really backing a lot of these, superior kind of threat intelligence, and that's going to be Talos. So Talos is a Cisco company. They have been a Cisco company, and really every single piece of their security products is built on top of the Talos threat intelligence engine. So as we can see, there's a lot of analytics and statistics on the left-hand side. So you've got a 24/7, 365 days a year that you have these threat intelligence researchers looking at those zero-day threats. So looking at how many threats they're actually blocking daily, how many samples of malware, how many email messages are really going through. So one thing that's really important that I want to point out with this is you're looking at a lot of these security solutions. What'll happen, especially when you look at from the collaboration side, a lot of times they're bolting these things onto those collaboration solutions. They're looking at, maybe utilizing a third party for those threat intelligence information. So one thing that's great about Cisco, and one thing that's always great from the customer side is this one throat to choke. And I know that's always kind of a talking point, but really for Cisco, because Talos is their threat intelligence engine, it's built on all their security products are built up from kind of the bottom up from that. Anything that happens, they're able to go back to that team. It's part of Cisco, so they're not really having to point fingers at that third-party solution, going, hey, this may have been their problem, it wasn't really our problem. You don't have to worry about any of that kind of finger pointing going on there, but looking at, Cisco had developed Talos before. They were really wanting to, push a lot of their security products up from the bottom down or from the bottom up. So that's something that's very important as we talk to our customers, about these types of security solutions is Cisco's very bought in with security, especially when they look at the Talos. A lot of organizations, even outside of it, utilize Talos in their analytics and their threat intelligence that's built in there. So very important to talk to, your partners about that, especially as they're looking at these security solutions, because Talos is going to be that engine that's really driving a lot of these security solutions from there. So next, just wrapping up, wanting to talk about some of those incentives that are out there, some of those promos. So looking at secure remote work, and this is why we were talking about some of those collaboration lines before. So looking at, how do we utilize some of these WebEx offerings, especially as we have people going to more remote now or working, hybrid. They're looking for a lot of these collaboration solutions for a single pane of glass that they're able to collaborate in. So Cisco Secure Remote Work is going to be a great solution for them. And you also have the ability to add in any of those, Duo for multi-factor authentication side, or Umbrella to protect from those DNS, attacks. And one thing we didn't talk about was that cloud mailbox defense, just another solution that's built out there, but something very similar to Microsoft's advanced threat protection that's going to help filter some of those email or malicious sources that may be coming through email. It's able to do some sandboxing there as well, so it's able to look at, hey, is this a malicious source that maybe is going to try to deploy itself in 6 months? So it's able to kind of look at those types of features that's happening. So one more piece of kind of protection, and then additionally one other solution as well that kind of is a compat, within that Microsoft stack as well. So this is going to be for that small medium business line. So so you're going to have the max of about 250 users for this when it comes to that $29.95 kind of per month user guideline. If you are, or do you have any customers that are over that mark, then you want to look at this core enrollment or the EA suite, or looking at this multi-enterprise agreement, maybe with hardware as well. Especially if you're looking at collaboration, you can look at bundling maybe this with some collaboration hardware, or even some security hardware from the next-gen firewall side as well. So just looking at the secure design and remote work from kind of that side of it, looking at what's kind of brought into it from the security side, what are those options there that they can bring, what are the pricing, and then any of the details. So if you guys do want some more information on this, feel free to reach out to me at askcollab@scansource.com. More than happy to give you some more information on it. And then lastly, just wanting to wrap it up with looking at the Cisco and Microsoft E3. So as I was kind of talking about before, that email security really does fit in well within that advanced threat protection side of it. So what Microsoft has is they have a Microsoft E3 bundle, which gives them all those productivity tools, a lot of their on-premise type of server kind of hardware as well, but it doesn't give them that ability to add any IP calling. It doesn't also add in any of those security features. So there's a great solution from WebEx to be able to fit that kind of jump to go to an E5 from a Microsoft side with those Cisco products. So looking at WebEx and looking at those security features to bring it up for that advanced threat protection. So just another kind of solution should you have customers that are looking at going Microsoft. If they don't want to, if they're not completely sold maybe on Microsoft Teams, from a collaboration standpoint, or maybe some of their security products, they can look at utilizing some of the Cisco stack to kind of ad hoc and add in there to that as well. So if you have any questions, I really appreciate you stopping by. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at askcollab@scansource.com. More than happy to set up some time, even if you want to do more of a one-on-one sessions to understand some of these products a little bit more. So I will be creating a 201 session and probably running through a demo of that Securex platform too, just so you can kind of see what that single pane of glass looks like. But I want to thank you for stopping by today, and thank you for joining our Cisco one-on-one session, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you.